Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Wings Podcast. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri. On today's show, we will meet Riday Nakhate, a physical therapy patient turned health tech entrepreneur. He is the managing director and co founder of Khan Innovations, a Mumbai based startup that builds technology driven solutions to help people live longer, healthier, and lead more active lives. Driven by his passion for technology and desire to see others not suffer the way he did, Riddha returned from the US after 6 years in education and practice to start his business venture in 2018. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration from Northeastern University, Boston, US, and, as he calls himself, a cricket fanatic. Welcome, Riday, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You started your health tech venture, as I just introduced you, where you said that a physical therapy patient turned health tech entrepreneur.
Yes.
That's a bit of mystery there.
So basically back in 2015, when I was in the US, there was a cricket game going on. I was setting up for a nice party at home. And I injured my back while trying to lift a couch. I went to the doctors the next morning, and I was sent back with painkiller prescriptions and said, take rest. It'll be okay. I thought everything would be fine because I thought it might be just something that's a small muscle issue that might have happened. But for the next 2 years, I constantly had such episodes where I would throw my back and I would be in bed rest for the next couple of days. So it would be about 3 days, 5 days, 7-day gaps where suddenly anything I tried to pick up, whether it was an activity like cricket or boxing or squash, I would not be able to do it. For me, leisure sports was very important. And I kind of had a very difficult time in the US for those 2 years because I didn't know what to do with my time, with my life at that point. And I graduated and then I came back to India and I insisted saying that nothing doing, I'm going to get an MRI scan done. And we got the MRI scan and we found out that it was a disc that was ruptured and the spinal fluid and the fluid was pressing down on the spine, causing pain that was radiating all the way to my foot. So we met a couple of spine surgeons and, as some of them kind of were pushing me towards spinal surgery. And at 21 rather, doing spinal surgery is a very scary thought because if it gone wrong, it affects the rest of your life. And luckily, my dad was not, he said, no, we'll get more consults, we'll figure this out. And I broke down. I genuinely broke down as somebody. I didn't know how to see what my future life was going to be like. And luckily, I met one wonderful surgeon in Mumbai, and he said, look, you're young. Let's try physical therapy first. Let's try a conservative approach. If that doesn't work, we will do surgery. And I said, okay, I'll give it my all. And I found a fantastic physiotherapist based out of Mumbai. He helped me through my initial days to get the exercises done. I started leaving Bombay with less radiating pain, but I continued to do it on my own for almost 6 months before I was completely pain-free. And believe it or not, I was back playing sports with no pain, nothing that I was worried about, after the match, ki abhi kya hoga, that kind of. So it really changed my life. I felt like I had found myself again and my motivation, my general, mood, aura, everything around me started becoming positive again. And that kind of motivated me to look into the space. But unfortunately, as they call me the broken man, I had a right knee injury just after this started. And now I felt like I knew the steps. So I said, first let's get an MRI done. Mm-hmm. Then we go to the doctor. Doctor said surgery. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, you may have a conservative approach also because it's a meniscus tear. Don't worry about it. You can try it out. Tried it out, didn't work. Went for surgery. Did physiotherapy. Got pain-free again. And unfortunately, I got lazy. And I felt like, Abhi, now there's no pain. Everything's fine. Let's move forward. Let's get back to regular playing again. And that was the biggest mistake I made. So fast forward a little further and my dad and me were discussing one day, why are you so injury prone? I've had ankle sprains as a kid. I've had so many issues as a kid. So why are you so injury prone? Like you're you're 21 and 22 and you're having all these injuries in your life. How is that possible? And he said, okay, let's research, let's look into it. So we found out this. A lot of research said that, through your gait patterns or through your footwear or footwear sizing, selection, all these things could affect the way your body starts behaving.
Mm-hmm.
And we came across some tech that was involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the tech that we found, the leading manufacturer, so it was a foot pressure mapping system.
Okay.
And the leading company, or the company that had been there for 30 years, was actually based out of Boston, which is where I was based out of.
Correct.
So I knocked on the door. I said, "Hey, let me see what this technology is all about." And I stood on the system, and they asked me to, stand. And they said, "Hey, do you know that 70% of your weight is on your left side, which is
Left foot.
Left foot, and the entire left half of my body was taking 70% of my weight, which is because my right had gone through surgery.
Yes.
My body had auto-corrected itself
Yes.
to start loading the one that did not have pain. But because my physiotherapy was incomplete and all these things, it never changed back to a 50-50 equation. I kid you not. I came back, I went for a nice New Year's party, and I dislocated my left kneecap.
My goodness.
And that is why I've had so many injuries. But the moral of the story said that, one, I had a successful round of physical therapy the first time around because I was motivated. I went to the end point.
Correct.
Second time I didn't. And I realized that patient education is so vital in the process of recovery. And because we do not have access to tools, because we don't, may it be just the general access to modern new day tech in India, or whether it's the price point that doesn't work for them, we just don't have access to it here. And that's what I wanted to change. So that's why that I took that difficult, choice. I said, let's go for it. Let's try to see whether we can avoid something like this happening to someone else through education, through technology. Let's see what we can do. And that's how I became.
But then what I'm hearing from you, Riday, is, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Please.
is just the way I stand or just the way my body weight is distributed across my 2 feet can cause a lot of problems which I would never know what is the cause.
Absolutely.
So this is a case of, if I can say it, that I don't know that I don't know.
Very, very well put. Most people don't know. Today, we all work with fantastic normals saying that, hey, this is the normal way, the ideal way.
Correct.
But let's get two things straight here. That when we say ideal, it's ideal by statistics, ideal by knowledge, ideal by the way of birth.
Correct.
But when we start talking about how you live your life, your muscle groups, your body starts adapting to its own approach and form. What's important to do is to know that. When you know it, you become aware of it. So it's fine that you have more pressure on your heel versus your forefoot. That's okay. It happens. That's how you stood all your life. If I try to change it when you have no pain, you're going to start damaging other things because your other muscles aren't capable of handling it.
Correct.
So it's a very unique space. Biomechanics is so complex, but at the same time, knowing about your biomechanics can go a long way in finding out how to prevent problems, and at the same time, what are real problems and what are just effects of certain problems.
So, how did this very personal experience of yours, what you're saying, of undergoing your back pain for a long period of your life, and then probably injuring multiple body parts, it has formed a seed for the health tech venture that you have. So is that how Khan Innovations got born?
Yeah, very much so. I think that there was no two things. I wanted to be in the space that I had gone through so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say so much pain, I have gone through my own set of pain, but I know people who have had injuries which are far worse.
Correct.
So when I understood this, I said that this could be something that we can help people go through that process of recovery by diagnosing the right problem, by helping them find the treatment, by educating the practitioner who's involved. And we can also go the long distance of preventing it. So that is why I wanted to start something in this space that, my back pain, or rather, more than the back pain, it was my knee, my left knee cap dislocation was the big motivator, because I could have prevented that had I known earlier. So that is something that is there. Now, if you look at the stats, the number of times you have one knee replacement followed by another knee replacement are very common.
Very, very common.
And this is one reason why it happens, because you have one surgery you start loading the other side, and if you don't correct it you don't course correct it through therapy, you're eventually loading the other side with a lot more than it's capable of handling. So these are things that we can do. Okay, I'm only giving you the example of the knee, but it's all about all the big joints, all the big, all the big muscles can be looked at from this perspective.
So, what's the product that eventually, got created?
Sure.
And whom is this for?
Fantastic. So, the main product line is called the Ohm series of plantar pressure systems. Okay. So, at its core, they analyze how you distribute your pressure or your body weight on your feet.
Okay.
But when I make you do certain activities with that, I can understand a lot more. So our systems basically tell you first your standing posture. How do you load your weight on your feet when you're standing? We do a balance test, which can tell you about the risk of fall. We do a gait analysis, which tells you the way you walk, your certain things that are not optimized for your movement. Things like that can be told. So that is one set. The second software that we also have, which works on the same hardware, also allows us to do functional assessment, which is basically saying, now I want to identify particular muscle groups. So we use it as an open canvas. So imagine doing a lunge or doing a squat. And here now you're identifying different muscles. So for example, in a squat, your glutes are also very important. So if my glutes are not firing on one side, my squat is going to be leaning towards putting pressure or weight on one limb versus the other.
That's right.
So using these particular postures that you're already aware of, we can now further isolate it and make sure there's an objective way of tracking that recovery. So the last product line that we have, or this last software that we have, is called Rigo. It's a rehabilitation module. Basically, it's a gaming set of games that help you start appropriating your pressure in between your legs, between certain activities that you do. Okay. So you play the game and you start transferring your weight from limb to limb, forward to back. You start swaying. Your intrinsic muscle starts getting trained. It's supposed to help with your therapy, not be the main therapy alone, but it's supposed to help with your therapy. So this particular product line, when we started, was imagined for physiotherapists and all kinds of, whether it's neuro, sports, orthopedic, all of them were supposed to be were targeted with this, and it is a tool that is vital for all. But along the way, we've realized that this core tech is useful in so many other industries. One of the biggest ones is the diabetic market. So that is a big market for us now, because in the diabetic market, foot pressure has a direct correlation with where foot ulcers can form, which is a very big worry because that would lead to amputations.
Correct.
So huge population size deal with this problem on a day-to-day basis. If you do regular screening using this tool, you could prevent something like this. So that's how we've come about, that. So these two industries are big ones. Apart from that, the same tech is used by prosthetists and orthotic engineers to build custom insoles, to build, even prosthetic limbs to see whether patients are, loading their artificial limbs correctly. It's also used by orthopedic doctors now, especially in the foot and ankle space being a major focus for us as well. And that's mainly for also educating patients as to what's going on and to see the effects of, post-surgical, what is happening with the ankle, with your foot, and so on.
And how much of the product design and the product engineering is homegrown, made in India?
All of it. And I kid you not, everything has been designed, developed, and manufactured in our very own premises. We have done everything on our own. We've been super lucky with some very bright young talent when we started off. And, that is why we're able to have such a wide range of products within the last couple of years. And everything is built by us.
Now, I'm trying to play a devil's advocate over here.
Sure.
Okay, Riday? I mean, for somebody like you who's done your undergrad in business administration in one of the prestigious schools in the US, the Northeastern in the Boston, and then you choose to come back to India after your studies, more often than not, one ends up identifying, let's say, a business space or a product or a technology which is probably prevalent out there in the developed market like
Sure.
the US, and do some kind of a collaboration and then set up a shop in India, do what is called transfer of technology,
Right.
and then probably indigenize the product and so on and so forth. I mean, you could have gone that direction, but you chose otherwise.
I think this was a call made by the heart. Honestly, it's something that I have had a lot of recent experience working by understanding my customer better. I like to go a direction of first understand the customer I'm catering to. We've seen a lot of businesses, as you rightly mentioned, take something that works in the US, adapt it, bring it to India, and it's worked or not worked. That's an open kind of statement. But I've wanted to do something wherein we we wanted to build something for the customer who is truly our Indian physiotherapist initially, and now the Indian clinicians that we've also added to it. India is a market in the medical space which is very different from the rest. Right from the patient's willingness to understand to the education level to everything is very different. So they deal with a very different set of problems. I can take a fantastic technology from the US like the one I stood on, which has been there for 30 years. I mean, why would you make something differently, right? And bring it to India. But it would not work in terms of price point. It would not work in terms of usability. It would not work in terms of the end output that the patient is looking for. More often than not, we've realized that we've understood not only our direct customer, which is the doctor, but also the patient's mindset. And that is why when we started creating something, I wanted to do it truly of our own method. And that's why our product is different from all the other systems that make it to India. It's not the only pressure mapping system, but it is the only pressure mapping system that does all of what we do in one. It does, and that is what kind of has motivated me to keep doing it on our own. Also, the second thing I would want to say is that I think bringing a business from the US to here, or anywhere from the West or anywhere to here, is phenomenal. But I genuinely enjoy raw development. It's something that has always been very, very close to me. Since we started. In fact, it took some time to let go of the product development mindset to the business CEO mindset, where you have to kind of go out for the sales. It was a tough transition, but it was because I genuinely enjoyed it. I love getting my hands dirty, and I think that's very difficult to do when you're trying to just transfer technology is fine, but I really wanted to get my hands dirty, so that's why we did it.
So this is my baby kind of stuff, is it?
Yeah, very much so. And when I say my baby, it's our baby. I mean, I started this company with my dad, firstly, and it is with a bunch of people who've been with me from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's our company in every way. They have been equally, they have the equal right and the feeling that says this is our baby. It's just not my baby, it's our baby, because we all work tireless nights on it.
So, Riday, I have been fortunate in my life to have been involved in setting up 2 startups.
Oh, fantastic.
Over a period of 10 years. Both were in the product space and software product space. Now, startups is something which I have lived through for 10 years of my life. One of the things I've experienced myself as a founder CEO of those 2 ventures was you end up doing just about everything, of course, in the initial days where passion and energy runs very high, and it's right. At a certain point in time you realize that you've hit a scale. You got to bring in some structure, some systems, some processes, right. Create roles, and then of course then there are people doing what they are assigned. But the early 2-3 years is a madhouse. So is Khan Innovation today in the madhouse stage, or has it just passed that?
We're passing that, let's say that. It is no longer the madhouse stage. We started formalizing things January of last year. Uh-huh. Right from the kind of office we wanted to be in, to kind of our sales and marketing structures, to communication and individual roles. But I would not want to go as far as saying that these are all written in stone, because I think at the end of the day, I think there's a long time before we get out of that chaos. Like, chaos is sometimes just thrown upon us.
Of course.
And I think it is important to have enough flexibility in this stage that we're in right now to allow for these minor adjustments and movements. But yes, a lot more structured than the first 2-3 years, but still not as structured as we probably want to get to eventually. But we're no rush to get there. Let's put it like that.
So then it seems to be a very interesting play between 2 polarities, which is of structure and flow.
Right.
Would that be the right way to phrase it?
Yeah, I think so. Very much so. I think you got it right there on the money.
We had on one of the earlier episodes of our podcast a young, engineer who, just like you, went to the US, but for his master's, in electrical and computer engineering. And then he came back and he joined his father's business in electronics. And they are into medical electronics.
Wow.
We'll talk about it sometime later. But the value addition that this boy brought in was to design probably India's first EV charger.
Very interesting.
And this was 3 years back. At that point in time, much of the EV chargers, of course, India is a very nascent market as far as battery operated electric vehicles are concerned. But then even today, he was saying that much of the chargers are getting imported from China.
Very true.
And of course, they have been designed for a market and a specification of a different kind. And the charging that happens of these EV chargers are based on the input, which is the electric charge and the current and the all the supplies that we have in India. So he figured out that for an indigenous problem, you have to have an indigenous design and indigenous product.
Very true.
I'm sensing that that's what is probably happening with you and your products at Khan.
Yes, absolutely. And you're bang on, because I think I'll just take a little bit from the example that you've given. I think let's take Ola. The Ola scooter fiasco that happened relatively recently.
Correct.
If you look at what the records say, they basically took a particular set of a set design, a set approach, and imported the entire concept into an Indian brand without actually understanding its feasibility in the Indian market. In terms of, I'm talking about battery, and we saw bikes being burned up and several other things that bikes catching fire and several things like that. I think it is really, really important to understand your consumer here. There are certain aspects of life that carry forward from the West to here. But when we talk about businesses like ours as well, a B2B business has its own structure in every I would not even say country. I would say it goes state by state.
Correct.
And I think that is very important to understand, because it affects not only your product, but its pricing models, its offerings that go along with it, and everything else that goes into it. So that is exactly what I would completely agree with that statement, that it has to be, you need to have enough information about your customer set to know how, to know exactly whether this is going to work for them or not. And bringing something, building something here, even after having one product, we've had to make adjustments to it.
Of course.
So that we could cater a particular model to the south, to the north, to tier 2 cities, to tier 1 cities, because everything is different.
Sure.
The patients are educated differently, their willingness to pay is different, their belief in the core science of where they're getting this particular thing is different. So how you have to tackle all of it. And it's not only product, I'm saying it's product along with, the entire marketing mix that goes along with it. So
it sounds like as if there was this beautiful, beautiful ad by Asian Paints, which came up, I think, first time almost 3 decades back, maybe more, 25, 30 years back, where the entire family has to comes together to decide the shade of the color that they want on the walls of their kids' bedroom.
Okay.
So the ad shows mom and dad, grandparents, and this young daughter, probably 6, 7 years old. And everybody zooms in on one color called pink. And they open the shade card.
Right.
And then there is, maybe 15, 20 shades of pink.
Right.
And the girl puts finger on one of the shades and says, "Ye mera wala pink hai."
Yeah, okay.
So looks like what you're trying to say is, with your product, it has to be, probably there's an opportunity exists to customize it to that level of individual experience.
Absolutely. So I think more than the product, as I said, that it would be the product along with its marketing mix that I would say is more adaptable. We've made features that are universal, but they've been built by taking inspiration from each of these cities. So that's how I would put it.
So let's kind of go back in time.
Sure.
And let me ask you, which year was it that you left for the US for your bachelor's?
2012, I think. Yeah.
Correct. So Riday of 2012, what were his dreams and aspirations then?
I think back then, I think I had seen entrepreneurship in my journey back then, surprisingly enough.
You did?
Yeah. Dad has been an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And I've seen the life that he lives. It's not easy, but at the same time, it was exciting. I saw the way he talked about his work. And I always loved the idea that, you would be able to control many more facets of what you're doing. Now I think control is the wrong word, but at least be involved in many more facets of what you're doing.
Sure.
And I really wanted to do that. The only question was how, because in 2012 I did not know my path to get there, and that was, for me, that was what kind of I attempted to start something even back in 2015, which didn't work out. So it was kind of in sync with that.
So, what was the life of young Riday in Boston as he was pursuing his bachelor's?
I think, to be very honest and open, I think Riday of 2012 to 2015 was definitely very immature. He struggled with, I think the idea was he struggled with the, great move from India to US, although he didn't want to let it on. I think I really genuinely struggled. I couldn't, it took me some time to understand what was important in life, how to navigate through the basics of life, which were very different back then. And
of course,
I still had support. I had family support, but at 18, I was still not there. But that did transition into something much more after. So I think 2015 Riday was a lot more in tune with what he wanted to get to eventually. And I think that kickstarted my journey where I started finally exploring what it was like to have a foreign education. Until then, I was really not taking advantage of it. So my Boston days were, my first 2 years, very, very, very not so great. But I think the next 4, I think I made it count. I could have done a lot more, but I think I would say I'm in a happy place right now. So.
But then those 4 years of undergrad study, was it all work, all play, or both?
Definitely not all work. I think it was both. But again, as I said, that the first 2 years it was none. I don't think it was either all work. It was neither all play. It was a very difficult thing to figure out. The next 2 years was about all work and play. It was whether it be sports and whether it was sports was not actually going on in 2015 as much. But I started traveling the world. So I started going. I did my summer abroad, got experience over there. Kind of was managing my team as well. I was also trying to start that small little startup. So it was a very 2 years of all work, I would think, and a little bit of play. And then the next 2 years was a nice balance of both. When I graduated and I got a job, and things were very nice and settled. So I had a mix of both by then.
What was the play about?
The play was mostly to do with sports for me. I think that was a lot more for me with sports than anything else, because I'm a huge cricket fan. And it's something that I genuinely thought my last 2 years, because I had just come out of injury and rehabilitation. The last 2 years, 2018 and 2017, gave me the opportunity to get back into sport.
But Northeastern Boston, what has that got to do with cricket?
You'd be surprised. Cricket in America is massive. When I say massive, I mean because of the number. You just think about the number of Indians and Pakistanis and West Indians and people traveling to America for education.
Sure.
You're bound to have a cricket team. Now, I didn't think this was true even when I went.
Okay.
And coincidentally, the funniest thing that happened to me was that I was trying to figure out in my initial days, how am I going to make new friends, right? It's a new place, all these new people from all around the world. And fine, you have these, fresher parties and stuff like where you're going to go and meet them, talk to new people. But the biggest thing that my core sort of friends came from one very, very funny incident. I was in the US, and I went to someone's house for my aunt's friend's house. Unfortunately, he's no more. But he gave me this. We got along, and he said, "You're a cricket fan. Wait, don't leave." And just when I was leaving his house, he gave me a cricket bat, a season ball cricket bat.
Wow.
A person I've never met. Never ever met before this.
Where was this in the US?
This was in just outside Boston.
Okay.
My aunt lives there, and there's a big Indian community over there.
Of course.
And Mahesh uncle was the first one to kind of, he just gave me that bat, thinking, you know what, he's gonna have a little bit of fun. But I kid you not, that was the thing that changed my entire next 6 years was because of the bat. I think there's a lot of power in that one gesture that he gave me. I carried that bat home. My aunt dropped me to the city and I started walking with my bat. And a few of my closest friends today, at that time who I didn't know, saw me walking from across the street with this bat. And they came across the street and say, "Hey, is that a cricket bat?" And then we started talking, and then I found out about my club, about the club in Northeastern, and I found out everything there. And my entire friend circle, everything started over there. And this was, how it was. So for me, play is all about sport and about cricket.
So you talked about Mahesh Uncle, who
Yeah.
sadly is no more there today.
Yes.
If there is something that you would want to say to Mahesh Uncle right now, with the gift that he gave you and what you did with it, what would you say to him?
So I think, firstly, thank you, because I don't think I would have been able to go through 4 years of college without that. It honestly, the only thing that has been the one true constant in my life was cricket. And when I joined college, I thought that was slowly going away.
Mm-hmm.
And this one gesture has literally made me survive college and make it through that initial phase of 2 years where I was really unsure of whether I'm capable enough of being here to actually help to the next 2 years, which were like, hey, let's get it on, let's do something new. But cricket was the one constant. If it was not playing, it was management. It was something to do with cricket. But that bat was the one that changed it. So I genuinely it's such a small gesture. Maybe for him, he didn't even think about it 2 times. Okay. But for me, it was such a big thing because it really did make my next 6 years happen.
And this love for cricket, you said, went to a stage of being a fanatic.
Right.
So any fanatic moments you've had with this beautiful game of cricket?
It's actually the start of this story, right? So the first thing when you get injured and a doctor asks you is, how bad is your pain?
Yes.
And if your answer is, above 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, it's acute and you got to do something about it.
Correct.
When I injured my back in 2015, it was while I was setting up for an India-Pakistan game for the World Cup. And it was setting up. So the match hadn't started. It was a 50-over World Cup.
What do you mean by setting up?
I was having a party. I had said this is an India-Pak game.
This was in your Northeastern campus?
Yes. So off campus. So I had already started living off campus by then in an apartment. And I said, I want to have all my friends over because this is a big event for me. And everyone was interested. Let's India Pak. And everyone's going to show up, right? Whether you're a cricket fan or not. And there you have Indians, Pakistanis, everybody there. So called everybody home. And before that, I was just moving the couch and nobody else was there to help me. And that's when the injury happened, the first injury that I talked to you about. I was in pain of above 10. It was 11 out of 10. I kid you not. I could not get up. My roommate had to come. He was out of the apartment. I had to call him. Luckily, I had my phone on hand. He helped me stand up. We got a brace organized somehow immediately. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't do anything. I had a party going on with 22 people, with me lying in the middle of the floor with a brace, with a hot pack, not able to move a muscle just because the match was going on. Instead of going to the emergency room like I should have. So that is kind of like my craziness is there that I've always prioritized somehow cricket. I used to reach office at 6 o'clock in the morning so I would not miss a single over of an IPL match. And these are like small moments that have kind of why I say I'm a fanatic. I've missed exams, honestly, like nearly missed exams because I couldn't wake up at 9:30 in the morning. But for cricket, I've gone 5 o'clock in the morning on a cold winter morning in Boston, which is saying something to just make sure that we continue to get that close space to play cricket. So it's that reason why I call myself a fanatic. Too many.
But now that you are into this high adrenaline stage of your business,
right,
which is at the early stage, which probably would consume, I wouldn't be surprised, maybe 50, 60, 70 hours a week at times.
Absolutely.
Is there a space to pursue this love of yours called cricket?
I think I make the space very much so. It is difficult to find time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I played a lot more cricket in the US than I played in India.
Mm-hmm.
One, because of the startup, and second, I think it's difficult to get facilities also very easily when you have time.
Okay.
It has to be pre-thought of and planned. As a company, we used to play cricket twice a month. We get a turf. All the guys would go and play cricket, and it would still keep it going. It's been a little less so lately because of the, as you rightly mentioned, the adrenaline. The requirement for the hustle is even more now than it was. So it has become difficult, and to also match timelines with everybody. Everyone has a personal life. It's a difficult thing to do. So that has been a little difficult. But when it comes to watching matches, I have always made sure that I give it time. Lately, I've been quite annoyed with the scheduling because they've been in the weekdays most of the times. But I make it a point to any free second I get, I'm on the phone watching the match. Or at home, I would not sleep without watching the highlights. And when I say highlights, I watch the same highlights for 3 days consecutively in the night before I fall asleep.
So let me ask you, how many times have you watched Dhoni hitting the six in the 2011 World Cup as a replay?
Oh, I would think more than a couple of 100 times because one, I genuinely get shivers every time I watch it. See, I'm thinking about it and I'm literally the hair on my back is like standing up. But also, it was my biggest marketing pitch to draw people to join my cricket club. So I had MSD's last 6 and the World Cup match always playing on my laptop. So because of that, I've seen that shot n number of times. It was a recruitment strategy.
Wow.
So
That's pretty smart. Riday, I want to switch gears
Sure.
at this stage in our conversation because I think unlike my generation, which is one generation earlier than yours, life was all about getting a good education. Most of us would look for finding a good job,
Sure.
challenging job. Put your head down, work 9 to 6, 5.5 days a week for 25, 30 years.
Right.
In probably the same industry, and at best switching 1 or 2 jobs.
Right.
That's probably was the canvas of the generation that I'm a part of.
Sure.
And you are a part of a generation, like all the previous guests we have had on this podcast. For you, the world is the playground.
Right.
Though born and raised in India, strongly anchored in Indian values, educated in India or like you overseas. When you look at the life for yourself at this stage, you have to design and navigate your next 25, 30 years. Not only the India of today as it is emerging, but in the larger global context as the world is emerging.
Right.
I mean, you have to have, I would like to believe, your eyes on both
Sure.
and a foot on both.
Right.
So I'd love to hear from you, Riday, that when you look at the world of today, whatever it is, I'm not necessarily saying geopolitics, it could
Sure.
be anything. What sort of world do you see is emerging? And what sort of India is emerging along with that?
Sure.
Because that's the playground for you.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So, it's a very interesting question. When I look at the world, and I segregate the world into 2 or 3 different divisions according to me. The world is a lot bigger than that, but this is where I have knowledge only from these places.
Sure.
So we talk about the EU, we talk about the US, we talk about India. For me, we are seeing, and this is according to me as an opinion more than anything else, I see the world becoming a lot more inward looking. I think countries are becoming a lot more inward looking. We saw that with Trump's administration 5 years ago. We saw that with the Brexit strategy that came up in the UK. We saw that with several things where several countries closing their borders to several people. It's because that everyone is taking a hard look at their own internal systems and internal people and their benefits. And that's what I'm seeing the world become. Mm-hmm. When I went to the US, at the time Obama's administration was going on. The reason I'm not trying to make this political, I'm trying to say that was a very different world. Cross-border movement, cross-border stuff is very much easier, though sentiments were different.
Correct.
Forget about policies. Sentiments were different.
Sure.
But among all of this inward-looking stuff that's happened, India is still managing to export a lot more of their talent to all these countries. India is a breeding ground for talent, for markets, for consumption, which is from what I see. You see companies that have come in, like let's take 5 to 10 years ago. India was a culture that believed purely in saving, and we still do. We save a lot. We consume a little less. We consume as much as we need to.
Correct.
Whereas the American and the UK cultures were a lot more about consuming what you don't even have, what you don't even capacity to have. But India is becoming also getting a modified version of this. I find India quite promising when it comes to a market for consumption, because I think people have aligned themselves slightly differently than they were before, and I've started seeing a big change in that manner. But coming back to the kind of question that you asked, I think from my perspective, right now there is nothing better than being in India. I think that if you can bring your knowledge and stuff that you gain from outside and bring it to India, there's a lot many more opportunities to create impact. Today, even with a lot of what's going on, there is such a big population unattended to for the variety of number of things that they need to be looked at, and I really think that India is the place to be. And we're seeing that reverse migration has become a little bit of a thing. Not as much, but it's become a little bit of a thing. And I hope to see a lot more talent come back in this manner.
But I also see some dark clouds on the horizon here, Riday. When I see at the India of today, is this hyper urbanization.
Very true.
I mean, I remember having read a McKinsey report probably more than 10 years back, or maybe even more, that there would be a point in time when more than 50% of Indian population would be living in 25 to 30 large Indian cities or towns.
Right.
One can't judge whether that is right or wrong, etc. But then
it's a forecast at the end of the day.
That's a forecast, and it is essentially going in that direction.
Right.
I mean, our cities are getting messy. I mean, I did my engineering in Bangalore when I went for the first time in 1981.
Sure.
And the Bangalore then and Bangalore now is a world of difference in all ways. And this is happening to all cities. I mean, I just returned back from this beautiful city called Indore. I had wanted to see Maheshwar. That's the reason I traveled all the way there. And Indore is, my goodness, there's construction happening everywhere. And of course, with economic activity happening at the pace at which it is happening, it does affect the way we live our life.
Very true.
So as a young Indian, when you look at India of today, which holds so much of promise, and I really appreciate you saying that this is where one should be in terms of geography. Like in the 60s, if anybody wanted to start their career, they will go to the US.
Yeah.
But probably in 2023 and onwards, it could be India. But what of India do you think India should not lose and cherish, irrespective of what forces are at play?
So I think I'll give the easiest example, the most relatable example has been the space of medical science, right? We've talked about it in the past as well, but I find we should not be too rushed to lose things that we already have a lot more knowledge than certain parts of the world just because it's been marketed by a Western country.
Correct.
I think India needs to hold on to certain roots, such roots like Ayurveda, where there is a huge amount of science, talking about right from the quality of life to how to live a life with, how to live a life with, good quality, how to kind of manage everything from routine to medication to everything. I would not use the word medication there, but, everything natural, everything that has come from the ground, everything that is kind of assisting your body to live a long life rather than solving a very quick pain point. But like this, there are several other small gems that are there, and I think those cannot be forgotten. We cannot forget our history. We cannot forget certain things. And I think Ayurveda and homeopathy was almost lost. according to me, it was almost lost. It's just started making a comeback. And whether it was during COVID or whatever, I think I'm glad that there is a comeback. That I find so many people I meet nowadays talking about Ayurveda, and I was like, yeah, I wouldn't have talked about it 5 years ago. And this is quite phenomenal to see. But yes, these are things that I wouldn't want India to forget. I think on the urbanization part, it's bound to happen. I don't think there's a whole lot that we can do to control that. Because at the end of the day, people are flocking to where the jobs are going to be, and therefore there's going to be more construction, more. I think it's just a vicious cycle that will never end. Till a city says we've had enough. Which is pretty much where Bombay is going to end up first to, because of geographical reasons.
Sure.
But this is what I'm kind of looking at when I say that India has certain things that they cannot change. I think urbanization is going to be good for some part, but I think we should also have enough resources and allocation and innovations coming in the space of agriculture and other industries which are not in these urban areas. I mean, we've seen a phenomenal growth in services, like in businesses and companies and government servicing urban areas, but we need to see the same kind of push made towards agriculture, which I think the government is doing, but I would like to see a lot more private organizations also head in that direction as well. But along with that, let's not forget the books that have already been written. There's a lot of knowledge there. I myself have not read most of them, but at the same time, there is enough tidbits of knowledge now coming through major whether it's social media influencers, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's podcasts. But make sure that we don't forget this. Try to find a way of educating everybody, at least to the bare minimum, where we know that we've done so many things far ahead of time, and let's not forget that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a beautiful book right now called The Land of Seven Rivers by Sanjeev Sanyal.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just started reading the book. It's not a recent book, it's an old book. And he's spoken about how just around a couple of 100 years back, India's GDP was almost 25% of world GDP.
Wow.
So there was something that was happening right at that point in time. Of course, context has changed, world has changed.
History has happened.
History has happened. A lot of history has happened.
Right.
Idea is, of course, not simply glorify the past, but be pragmatic and be honest to accept the current day reality.
Absolutely.
But as you very rightly said, cherish what is relevant and valid from the past for today.
Yeah.
That's something so beautiful you have said, Riday. At this stage of our conversation, let me ask you, what is it that you would say to the Riday of 2023 as he looks forward?
I think I would like to tell myself to be patient. I think that in today's generation, I see, including myself, I see a lot of impatience and a need to get to a destination. I keep trying to remind myself, this is much harder than you think, and it's very nice to say, but it's much harder to implement, is that I need to start enjoying the journey again. That's something I would want myself to do in 2023. My startup journey has been fantastic, but it has now become a goal to get to a destination, and when you try to get to that destination, you start forgetting about the journey, which is very important. So I would want to tell myself that take 2023, do what is needed, get to that destination, but enjoy that journey along with it. Don't try to unnecessarily make it bigger than it is, right? And that's my advice to myself, I would think. Very honest advice, I would think.
Wonderful, wonderful. Riday, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I have enjoyed every moment of it. Love to hear from you. How has this experience been for you?
No, I think this is fantastic. My first podcast, so I am a little, I was a little nervous about what was going to happen. Definitely enjoyed the conversation. I'm really glad that we did this, face to face as well. I really did enjoy this session, and I hope that we can have many more conversations, even off record, regarding all these things. I learned a lot the last time I met you, and I think hopefully I see you more often, and we can have these conversations again and again.
Absolutely. Next one is at your place in Mumbai.
Done.
Okay, dear. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75@gmail.com. Thank you.